You never think it's going to happen to you. I mean, you hear about it, right? Stories about guys finding out their wives are screwing the neighbor or someone from work. But that's other people's problems, not yours. At least that's what I told myself. Until it wasn't. It started small like it always does. Liana had been talking about Brent a lot lately. Brent helped fix the mower today, or Brent trimmed the hedges while you were at work. Little things. At first, I figured he was just being neighborly, doing what decent people do. I mean, the guy lost his wife a few years back, and we were friendly enough. But then the mentions became more frequent, and something about the way Liana said his name started to rub me the wrong way. One evening, I was sitting at the dinner table with Elliot, our 8-year-old. Liana was in the kitchen, humming to herself while cooking. Out of nowhere, Elliot says, "Uncle Brent and Mom have fun when you're not here." That hit me like a punch to the gut. I kept my face calm for Elliot's sake, but inside something shifted. My heart pounded in my chest as I forced a smile. "What kind of fun, buddy?" I asked, trying to sound casual like I wasn't about to lose my mind. "Like games and stuff," Elliot answered, shoving a forkful of spaghetti into his mouth. "They laugh a lot. That should have been innocent enough. I mean, it's not a crime to laugh." But the way my son said it, so matter-of-fact, gnawed at me. The unease wrapped around my chest like a vice. It's funny how quickly your brain shifts when you start to suspect something. Every little detail takes on new meaning. I noticed how Liana had started dressing differently, like putting on makeup just to be at home or wearing outfits that showed more skin than usual. She used to save those kinds of looks for date nights. Now, she wore them on random Tuesday afternoons, even when I was at work all day. And Brent's visits? Yeah, they weren't just casual stop-ins anymore. One Saturday, I took the day off and Brent showed up unannounced. He had this awkward look on his face, almost like he wasn't expecting me to be there. "Liana?" She plastered on that too wide smile, the one she pulls when she's hiding something. "Hey, Dex," Brent said, rubbing the back of his neck like a guilty teenager. "Didn't know you'd be home." "Yeah, I bet you didn't," I muttered, my eyes shifting between him and Liana. Her cheeks flushed, but she quickly waved it off like it was no big deal. I should have confronted her right then, asked her why our neighbor was showing up at our house when I wasn't supposed to be around. But I didn't. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Or maybe I just didn't want to believe what was right in front of me. Still, it wasn't just Brent dropping by that bothered me. It was the way Liana started acting when I was around. She put her phone down face first on the table every time I walked into the room. And she never used to be that protective of her phone. If I asked her what she was texting about, she'd snap, "Nothing you need to worry about." That was new too. Her defensiveness, like she was guarding some dark secret. Late at night, I'd lie awake next to her, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through 100 worst-case scenarios. But every time I considered asking her straight up, I'd back down. I wasn't ready to hear whatever answer she'd give me. I still wanted to believe that everything was fine, that Brent was just a neighbor, and Liana was just bored from being home too much. But that gnawing feeling in my gut never went away. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, a quiet voice whispering that something wasn't right. One night, after tucking Elliot into bed, I sat on the couch with a beer in hand, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from my own thoughts. Liana was in the kitchen, laughing softly as she texted someone. The sound grated on my nerves. "Who's so funny?" I asked, glancing up from my phone. Her smile vanished. "Just Nina from book club," she said quickly, slipping the phone into her pocket. I gave her a slow nod, my jaw tightening. "Right? Nina." It wasn't Nina. I knew it, and she knew that I knew. But neither of us said anything more. Instead, she disappeared upstairs, and I sat there, nursing my beer, feeling like a fool. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion itself. It was the doubt, the way it makes you second-guess everything. Every conversation, every glance, every laugh. I hated it. I hated that I was starting to question my own wife, the woman I'd built a life with. And yet I couldn't stop myself from noticing things, like how she smiled more when Brent was around, or how her eyes lit up when his name came up in conversation. I noticed every touch between them, every glance that lingered just a second too long. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew better. The night Elliot made that innocent comment about his mom having fun with Brent, that wasn't just kid talk. That was a red flag, plain and simple. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. Not out loud. Not to myself. But I knew the truth was coming, whether I wanted to face it or not. And once it did, there'd be no going back. Friday afternoon. I wasn't supposed to be home that early, but work had been light, and I figured I'd surprise Liana. Maybe take her and Elliot out for dinner, do something nice for a change. Lately, things between us had felt off. The tension, the unease. It sat heavy between us, unspoken, but always there. I wanted to shake it off, convince myself I was imagining things. When I pulled into the driveway, Brent's truck was already parked outside. That gave me a moment's pause. Sure, he was always around, but this felt different. Something in my gut twisted. I told myself I was being ridiculous. He was just lending a hand again. Maybe he fixed another damn lawnmower. But when I walked up to the front door, what I saw made me stop dead in my tracks. There was Brent, stepping out of my house, his shirt half unbuttoned. He froze for a second when he saw me, like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Liana stood in the doorway behind him, laughing way too hard at something. But the way she laughed, loud, forced, like she was trying to cover up whatever had just gone down, set every alarm off in my head. Brent gave me a tight, awkward smile. "Hey, Dex. Just helping Liana with some stuff," he muttered, buttoning up his shirt as he spoke. "Yeah," I said flatly, staring him down. "I bet you were." Liana's face flushed, and she quickly jumped in. "He was just fixing the sink, Dexter. You know how it's been leaking." Her voice was too cheerful, her posture tense, like she was bracing for me to call her out. I wanted to say something, anything, but I just stood there, jaw tight, watching Brent shuffle off to his truck. Liana stood frozen in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, pretending like none of it was a big deal. That night, things felt worse than ever. Liana barely spoke to me at dinner, glued to her phone, as if whatever was on it was more interesting than our family. I couldn't help but notice how her lips curled into a secretive little smile every time her screen lit up with a message she quickly hid. My stomach twisted in knots. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop, that I wasn't that guy, the kind who goes digging through his wife's phone for answers. But the nagging feeling in my chest wouldn't let up. I had to know. Later that night, Liana dozed off on the couch with her phone still clutched in her hand. She was snoring lightly, her breath even and peaceful. I knew this was my chance. I hesitated for a second, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Then I carefully slid the phone from her hand. Unlocking it was easy. Her password was still Elliot's birthday. What I found in that messaging app hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. There it was, Brent's name at the top of her messages, along with a string of texts that made my blood run cold. Flirtatious banter. Plans for secret meetings. And the photos. Jesus Christ, the photos. They weren't just flirty selfies. They were explicit. Things I never imagined she'd send anyone but me. My stomach churned, and my hands shook as I scrolled through message after message, each one worse than the last. Had fun today, can't wait for round 2. Missed the way you kissed me last time. Maybe next time we can skip the wine and go straight to dessert. I had to stop reading, or I was going to throw up right there. My throat tightened as everything sank in. It wasn't just my imagination. It wasn't paranoia. This was real. Liana wasn't just screwing around behind my back. She was in love with him. I sat there in stunned silence, the weight of it pressing down on me. But I wasn't about to let this slide. No, if she was going to betray me like this, I wasn't going down without a fight. I took screenshots of everything. Every text, every photo, every disgusting little emoji. I saved the dates and times of their meetings, logging them like evidence in a case file. I didn't even know what I was planning to do with it yet, but having it made me feel like I had some control, like I wasn't completely powerless in the face of her betrayal. The next day, I called up my old friend Ronan Graves. Ronan's the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's a contractor, divorced, and probably the most brutally honest person I know. We met up at a bar not too far from my place, and after a few drinks, I spilled everything. "She's banging the neighbor?" Ronan said, his voice low but full of disbelief. "Jesus, Dex. That's rough." "Yeah." I muttered, swirling my beer in its glass. I caught the messages. They've been sneaking around for God knows how long. Ronan shook his head, leaning back in his seat. File for divorce. Screw her, man. Don't waste another second on someone who doesn't respect you. I knew he was right. Divorce was the logical next step. But logic didn't feel like enough. A clean break wasn't going to cut it. I needed more than just a legal document saying we were done. I needed her to feel what I was feeling. I'm not just walking away, I said, the words coming out harsher than I intended. She's not getting off that easy. Ronan gave me a long, hard look, then nodded slowly. Revenge, huh? Something like that. I didn't know exactly what my plan was just yet, but one thing was for damn sure. I wasn't going to roll over and play the victim. If Liana wanted to mess with me, she was about to learn exactly who she was messing with. When I got home that night, she was already asleep, curled up on her side of the bed like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't blown up our entire life with those stupid texts. I stared at her for a long moment, wondering how things had gotten to this point. How the woman I'd married, the woman I'd built a life with, could turn into someone I barely recognized. But it didn't matter anymore. Whatever love I'd once felt for her was buried beneath layers of anger and betrayal. And if she thought I was going to take this lying down, she had another thing coming. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I wasn't looking for a way to get back at Liana. Not at first anyway. But when I met Cora Denton, it felt like the universe had handed me an opportunity, one I wasn't about to ignore. It happened by chance. I had just pulled into the driveway when I noticed her struggling with a massive box, balancing it against her hip while fumbling for her house keys. She was new in the neighborhood, moved in a couple of weeks ago, but we hadn't spoken much beyond polite hellos. She looked frustrated, sweat making her dark hair stick to her forehead. Need a hand? I called out, walking over. She glanced up, her expression shifting from annoyance to relief. Oh God, yes. You'd think I was moving bricks with how heavy this thing is. I grabbed the box from her, surprised at just how light it felt. You've got bricks in here? I joked, grinning for the first time in what felt like ages. She laughed, a real, carefree laugh that hit me like a breath of fresh air. Nope, just camera equipment. Photographer stuff. Welcome to my glamorous life. That's how it started. Simple, innocent. But there was something about Cora, this easy, unguarded energy that made her impossible to ignore. She was the exact opposite of Liana, whose every smile these days felt forced, every word laced with tension. As I helped Cora carry the box inside, I noticed how natural it felt to talk to her. No awkward pauses, no hidden agendas, just two people chatting like old friends. By the way, she said, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand, I'm Cora, and you must be Dexter, right? Yeah, I nodded. Nice to finally meet you. She flashed me a grin, the kind that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. Thanks for the help, Dexter. I owe you one. A couple of days later, she knocked on my door, asking if I could help her set up her Wi-Fi. Tech stuff is not my thing, she admitted with a sheepish grin. I wasn't going to say no. Inside her house, it felt different. Cora's place was warm and lived in, unlike the cold, tense atmosphere that had settled over my home. As I fiddled with the router, she made us both coffee and plopped down on the couch next to me, her legs tucked beneath her. You're a lifesaver, she said, handing me a mug. I've been trying to get this stupid thing working all morning. I shrugged. No big deal. Just needed to reset a few settings. We sat there, sipping coffee, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, relaxed. Cora was easy to talk to, and she had this playful way about her that was hard to ignore. So, she said with a sly smile, what's your story, Dexter? You married? Got kids? Yeah, I said, my throat tightening for a second. Married. Got a son, Elliot. He's 8. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. What's your wife like? I hesitated, not sure how to answer that. Complicated. I finally muttered, which made Cora laugh softly. Aren't we all? She said, nudging my arm playfully. That little touch, just a quick brush of her arm against mine, set something off in me. It wasn't much, but it was more warmth than I'd felt from Liana in a long time. From that day on, I found reasons to see Cora more often. I helped her set up furniture, hung pictures on her walls, even fixed a leaky faucet. And each time we worked side by side, our hands would brush. Accidental. Maybe. Or maybe not. There was an energy between us, something unspoken, but undeniably real. It wasn't just the flirting, though that was definitely part of it. It was the way she looked at me like she actually saw me, not as an afterthought or a burden, but as a person. Meanwhile, things with Liana kept getting worse. She noticed the change in me almost immediately. How I'd started coming home later without explanation, how I no longer seemed interested in our half-hearted conversations. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You've been out late a lot lately," she said, her voice sharp and accusing. I leaned against the counter, keeping my expression neutral. "Work's been busy." "Since when?" she shot back. "You're a financial analyst, Dexter, not a surgeon on call." I shrugged, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a proper explanation. "Stuff comes up." Her jaw clenched, and I could see the frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "You think I don't notice when you lie to me?" she hissed. "I'm not an idiot, Dexter." I didn't flinch. "Funny. That's exactly what I was about to say to you." That shut her up, at least for the moment. But I could see the cracks starting to form. She wasn't stupid. She knew something was up, and it was driving her crazy. And honestly, I liked it. Every time I spent time with Cora, whether we were assembling IKEA furniture or just chatting over coffee, it felt like I was taking back a piece of myself that Liana had chipped away over the years. And knowing that it was eating Liana alive, that was just the icing on the cake. Of course, I wasn't dumb enough to think Cora was some kind of saint. She was sharp. She picked up on the anger simmering just beneath my surface almost immediately. "You've got a lot on your mind," she said one evening as we sat on her porch sipping beers. "I can tell." "Yeah," I admitted, not bothering to hide it. She tilted her head, studying me for a moment. "You ever think about just letting it all out? Saying screw it and doing whatever makes you happy for once?" I gave her a sideways glance, a slow grin spreading across my face. Maybe. It wasn't just a maybe. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to make Liana pay for what she'd done. For every lie, every secret, and every stolen moment with Brent. And Cora? She was going to help me do it. Liana had played her game. Now it was my turn, and I was going to play it better. It was a Thursday night when I decided it was time. Time to stop playing it safe. Time to stop tiptoeing around what was already set in motion. I texted Cora, asking if she wanted to grab dinner. She responded almost instantly. "Thought you'd never ask," winking-faced. I told Liana I was going out to meet an old friend for drinks, not even bothering to hide the lie with much effort. She didn't argue, though I could tell by the way her jaw tightened that she wanted to. Good. Let her wonder. Let her stew in it. At the restaurant, Cora was already waiting when I arrived, a mischievous grin playing on her lips. She wore a sleek black dress that clung to her curves in all the right ways, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with that familiar playful energy. "Wow," she said, standing to greet me. "You clean up nice, Dexter. You're not so bad yourself." I shot back with a grin, feeling more alive in that moment than I had in years. We shared a bottle of wine over dinner, and conversation flowed easily, as it always did with Cora. She flirted shamelessly, her foot brushing against mine under the table, and I didn't shy away from it. By the time dessert arrived, I knew exactly how the night was going to end, and I welcomed it. After dinner, we didn't waste any time pretending we were going to say goodnight at her front door. As soon as we stepped inside her place, it was like a switch flipped. The tension that had been building between us for weeks finally broke, and we didn't bother holding back. Clothes hit the floor, hands roamed freely, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like second best. I felt wanted. When the night finally ended, we lay tangled in each other's arms, the room still humming with the afterglow. Cora rested her head on my chest, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my skin. "No regrets?" she murmured, her voice soft in the dark. "Not a single one," I whispered, meaning every word. The next morning, I drove home with Cora's perfume lingering on my clothes. It was subtle but distinct, sweet, with a hint of spice. The kind of scent that clings to you like a secret. I didn't shower or change. No, I wanted Liana to notice. As soon as I walked through the door, she was waiting for me in the kitchen, arms folded, her eyes narrowing the second she saw me. "Where were you?" she demanded, her voice tight. "Out," I replied nonchalantly, brushing past her. I saw her nostrils flare slightly as the scent hit her. Her eyes darted to my collar, where a faint smudge of lipstick, Cora's lipstick, stood out against the white fabric. Her expression faltered for a split second, just long enough for me to see the cracks in her composure. But she quickly masked it with a cold, forced smile. "You smell different," she said, her voice dripping with suspicion. I shrugged, acting like I didn't have a care in the world. Must have been the cologne at the bar. Some guys overdo it. I could practically feel her seething, but she didn't press further. Not yet. Over the next few days, I kept meeting Cora, and each time, I left just enough evidence for Liana to find. An unlocked phone with a message from Cora, a jacket that smelled faintly of her perfume, a playful text left deliberately within view. The first time Liana found one of the messages, she tried to play it cool. She confronted me casually, pretending like she wasn't burning up inside. "Who's Cora?" she asked one evening as I came in late from one of my work meetings. "A friend," I said with a shrug, not bothering to look at her as I kicked off my shoes. "A friend?" she repeated, her voice a little too high-pitched, her eyes narrowing. "Yep," I replied, deliberately vague, loving how the uncertainty was eating her alive. She tried to keep her cool after that, but it didn't last long. I knew her too well, knew exactly how to push her buttons. And watching her unravel bit by bit was satisfying. One night, after I'd left my phone charging in the living room, I caught her snooping through it. She didn't notice me standing in the hallway, watching her scroll through the messages between me and Cora. The moment she saw the texts, flirty, intimate exchanges that left no room for misinterpretation, her face twisted into something ugly. Jealousy, anger, hurt, all of it boiling just beneath the surface. She slammed the phone down on the counter, her hands shaking. When she saw me standing there, her expression shifted to something desperate and accusing. "So this is what you've been doing?" she hissed. "Running around with some whore behind my back?" I crossed my arms, meeting her glare with cold indifference. "Funny," I said, my voice calm. "I was going to ask you the same thing about Brent. That shut her up. For a moment, at least." Her face went pale, and she opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She knew she had no right to be angry. Not after what she'd done, but that didn't stop her from trying. "This is different," she stammered, her voice cracking. "What you're doing, it's... even?" I cut her off, my tone sharp. "Yeah, that's exactly what it is." Liana stood there, stunned, her hands balling into fists at her sides. "You're disgusting," she spat. I just smiled. Takes one to know one. After that, things between us hit rock bottom. Every conversation turned into a fight, every interaction laced with bitterness and resentment. And through it all, I kept seeing Cora, relishing every moment of the affair and the sweet, twisted satisfaction it brought me. Liana tried to keep up appearances, but I could see her falling apart. She was unraveling, bit by bit, and there was nothing she could do about it. She had played her game and lost, and now she had to watch as I played mine. Better, colder, and without a shred of guilt. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. When you play these kinds of games, it's not about if you'll get caught. It's about when. And that morning, the whole thing exploded right there in our front yard. Cora had stopped by to drop off a lens she'd borrowed from another photographer. Nothing major, just an excuse to see me before her next shoot. We stood outside, the morning sun warm on our faces as we made small talk, both of us leaning against my truck like we didn't have a care in the world. I should have felt guilty, standing there laughing with her, but I didn't. I felt free. And then Liana came out. The second she saw us, her face twisted into something feral, her lips curled, eyes dark with rage. For a brief second, I thought she might actually slap me, right there in front of Cora. Instead, she marched over, hands clenched into fists, her voice trembling with fury. "What the hell is this?" she hissed, her eyes darting between me and Cora. "Morning," I said calmly, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Don't morning me, Dexter. Is this what you've been doing? Sneaking around with her? Liana's voice cracked, loud enough that a few neighbors across the street turned to look. Cora took a step back, her hands raised like she wanted no part of the fight. Smart girl. That's when Brent appeared, jogging over from his yard with that same stupid look on his face. The one he always wore when he thought he was saving the day. Liana, maybe you should calm down, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Not your fight, Brent, I said, my voice low and cold. This is between me and my wife. And you were never welcome here. Brent's mouth opened, but no words came out. He knew exactly what I meant. He gave Liana one last awkward glance before slinking back to his side of the property, leaving her to face me alone. Her whole body was shaking now, but it wasn't just anger. It was something else, something darker. So it's true, she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. You're cheating on me. With her. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I just stood there, as calm as I'd ever been, and said the words I'd been waiting to say for weeks. Now we're even. Liana's face crumbled in an instant. All the anger, all the jealousy, it evaporated, leaving only shock and humiliation in its place. She stood there, staring at me like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Like she thought she'd still had some kind of hold over me. She didn't. Not anymore. Her legs buckled slightly, and she sank onto the porch step, burying her face in her hands. I watched as her shoulders shook with silent sobs. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel sorry for her. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red and swollen. Please, Dexter, she whispered. We can fix this. I made a mistake with Brent. It was stupid. It didn't mean anything. I was lonely, and you were always working. Her voice trailed off, and she looked at me, desperate and broken. Please, let's just start over. We can go to therapy or... It's over, Liana. The words came out colder than I expected, but they felt right. She shook her head, fresh tears welling in her eyes. No, it doesn't have to be like this. We can still... No, I interrupted. We can't. I'm done. She knew then that there was no more bargaining. No more lies. No more excuses. I was finished with her, with the marriage, with everything. The next day, I called a lawyer, Vivian Sloan. She came highly recommended, a sharp, no-nonsense professional who didn't waste time with niceties. During our first meeting, she sat across from me in her sleek office, her hands folded neatly on the desk. So, Mr. Rainey, she said, her voice smooth and efficient. What outcome are you hoping for in this divorce? Clean and fast, I told her. I don't care about the house. I just want custody of Elliot. Vivian nodded, making a quick note on her legal pad. I can make that happen. There was no hesitation, no doubt in her voice. She knew exactly what she was doing, and for the first time since everything started, I felt like I had someone in my corner. The process wasn't going to be easy. Divorces never are. But I was ready for it. Ready to close this chapter and start fresh. When I got home that evening, Liana was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I talked to a lawyer today, I said, standing in the doorway. Her shoulders sagged, and she let out a shaky breath. You really mean it, don't you? Yeah, I said quietly. I do. There were no more fights after that. No more shouting matches or desperate pleas. Just silence. Thick and heavy, like the final moments of a storm before everything goes still. And in that silence, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was just done. Done with the lies, the betrayal, the games. Done with everything that had once been my marriage. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe again. And it felt damn good. The divorce was over faster than I expected, but that didn't make it any less painful. Vivian Sloan did her job with ruthless efficiency. Papers were filed, hearings scheduled, and within a few months, it was official. Liana and I were done. She kept the house, just like I'd told Vivian I didn't care about it. All I wanted was a fresh start, and with Elliot's custody arrangements settled in my favor, I had what mattered most. The day I moved into my new apartment, there was this strange mix of emotions. Relief, mostly, but also a gnawing emptiness. When you end a marriage, no matter how broken, it still leaves a hole. I threw myself into my old hobbies. hoping they'd fill the space that Liana's betrayal had left behind. I went fishing more often, waking up before dawn to cast my line into still waters and let the quiet wrap around me like a blanket. I started hiking again, too, losing myself in trails and pushing my body just to feel something. Hell, I even hit the gym a few times, trying to shake off the years of resentment and anger that had built up inside me. Cora was still around for a little while. We kept seeing each other, and it was good, casual, easy, no strings. But it didn't take long for me to realize that what we had wasn't sustainable. She had been a distraction, a way for me to prove something to myself after Liana's betrayal. But distractions only work for so long. One morning, as I lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, I knew it was time to let go. When I told Cora that we needed to stop seeing each other, she just smiled, her expression soft and understanding. "I was wondering when you'd figure that out," she said, brushing a kiss on my cheek. "Take care of yourself, Dexter." And just like that, she was gone, leaving behind nothing but good memories and a clean break. Exactly what I needed. Meanwhile, Liana kept trying to contact me. She called, she texted, even emailed me a few times. At first, I ignored it all. Then, when it didn't stop, I blocked her number. I wasn't interested in reopening old wounds. I had spent enough time drowning in the past. It was time to move forward, with or without her. Brent disappeared from the neighborhood not long after the divorce was finalized. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. I didn't ask questions. Maybe Liana had become too much for him to handle, or maybe he just didn't want to deal with the fallout. Either way, it wasn't my problem. She could clean up her own mess now. It wasn't until a few months later, at a mutual friends gathering, that life threw me a curveball I didn't see coming. I was standing by the grill, minding my own business, when Isabel Hardy walked over and introduced herself. "Hey, you're Dexter, right? Ronan mentioned you'd be here." Isabel was different. She wasn't flashy or over the top. Just kind, thoughtful. There was a warmth in her eyes that caught me off guard, a quiet strength beneath her easy smile. We started talking, and before I knew it, the hours had slipped away. She told me about her divorce, how hard it had been, how it had changed her. I told her mine too, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was rehashing old wounds. Talking to Isabel felt natural, like finding someone who understood without needing a detailed explanation. We started seeing each other after that. Nothing rushed, nothing complicated. Just two people figuring things out together, one day at a time. And slowly, the walls I had built around myself began to crumble. For the first time since my marriage ended, I felt a glimmer of something real, something that went beyond revenge or distraction. Liana tried reaching out one last time, but I didn't even flinch. I deleted the voicemail without listening to it, knowing there was nothing she could say that would change what was done. The past was the past, and I wasn't dragging it with me anymore. I stood by the lake one morning, fishing rod in hand, watching the sun rise over the water. The world felt still and quiet, like everything had finally settled into place. I thought about Liana, about Brent, about all the anger and bitterness that had once consumed me. Revenge had been sweet, sure, but it was fleeting, like a firework that lights up the sky for a moment, only to leave you in the dark again. What really set me free wasn't making Liana pay. It was letting go, walking away from the wreckage without looking back. And as I stood there, the weight of the past finally lifted off my shoulders. I smiled. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free. And damn, it felt good.